Hey, good morning, everybody. So we are going to give this another shot, getting my Wi-Fi sorted out, one piece at a time, checking out my phone and satellite. And good morning. I'm so thrilled you're here, and we'll see how well this one works out. My name's Rita Hickman. I'm a body-mind expert and a shiatsu massage therapist. And what I do is I help women who are stuck in narcissistic relationships, who are traumatized, who are exhausted, who can't get their head on straight, who probably have PTSD from when they were children, who have gotten into the same sort of toxic, narcissist, codependent relationship, a few times. Maybe you've been in a narcissist relationship for decades. That happens so often, where the first person that we marry because we believe in, marriage for forever or whatever it may be, that we fall in love with someone who is very manipulative and very self-absorbed. And then 20, 30 years later, when you've just had it, now you're starting your life. So I help women with all the things that are in their heads and in their bodies and in their past that help them get narcissists out of their life for forever, even if they're related to them, even if they're married to them. Because one of the key things is when you change, when you evolve, not just change, not become somebody else, but when you become the best version of yourself that you can be, when you become happy and balanced and healthy and you take good care of yourself and you have good boundaries and you communicate well and you see deeper into what's going on, people don't behave like narcissists to you because you've figured out how to navigate your life so that narcissists aren't interested in who you are and they treat you differently. So even people who have the tendency for narcissism will treat you differently because you behave differently. So there is a ton of hope. So today what we're going to talk about is are narcissists inherently bad? So, narcissism comes from a wide variety of reasons, but typically it can come from one of two reasons. One, that people are either born more on the intellectual Asperger side, where they are inherently wired to not be connected with other people, to lack the basic functions that we need to see things from other people's points of view. And so because we inherently don't really care about other people, we don't get it. We don't understand what's involved with relationships. And if someone is more on that side of the scale, more intellectual, let's say engineers or doctors or scientists, and they didn't get a family that was supportive, that could help them navigate how they were wired, more on the Asperger side, how to relate to people, how to communicate, then they're going to be pretty awful because they really don't care. And especially if it's not in their best interest, they don't care. And it's not that they don't want to care, it's that they don't get it. And so narcissists who are more on the Asperger side, who were, born without this connection, and you'll see it in their family. You'll see it go down generation to generation. Like there was always somebody that didn't have the ability to connect. They just didn't get it. They were completely in their own head and would do things that were thoughtless and insensitive because of how they were wired that way. It's caused tons of problems in relationships. So you can either be more on the Asperger side and nobody taught you how to handle it, in which if you're in a relationship with somebody who's more over there, it's really good to take a deep dive into people being on the spectrum, whether it's autism, whether it's Asperger's, whether it's somewhere in there, and do a deeper dive into the tools and the skills that help you understand people who are that self-absorbed. Now, the other side of the scale tends to be people with a mental health challenge, and not a mental health challenge like they're awful, evil people. But a mental health challenge like they've got ADD, they've got ADHD, they've got bipolar, they've got things which they were born with And typically, nobody taught them how to handle that either. So they developed skills when they were young to protect themselves. So, what is ADD or ADHD? In a nutshell, it's that the brain isn't getting enough communication, it isn't getting enough stimulation, which is why caffeine and sugar and chocolate and things like that actually can work very well for people who have ADD, because their brain kind of stays on the surface. Their thoughts sort of stay on the surface. So what happens is they're constantly in a reaction mode. They're constantly dealing with anxiety. They're constantly on edge. And it's because their brain is walking a tightrope. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, they go into protection mode, especially if they were raised in families that it was minimized or belittled or ignored or ridiculed. Um, Especially if they were raised in families that didn't understand, what was going on. Here's this child who's constantly acting out in emotionally violent and overwhelming ways, and nobody ever said, hey, what's going on with this kid? Why are they behaving this way? And so here's this child who was left to their own devices, who can hardly think straight, just on the surface of their head, becoming an adult. And they find ways to cope. And one of the ways that they cope is they decide, is it going to be me or is it going to be you? And when they feel helpless and hopeless and on edge and out of control, they will do whatever they need to do to get back into control. And if they weren't raised in a way that taught them how to do that healthy, they came from a dysfunctional family, then they're going to be in all of those bad habits and patterns, and they can get pretty hardwired into the system. So are they inherently bad? No, a lot of times there's more going on. So if you were in a relationship with someone who's emotionally volatile, who seems really good in all these other situations, but you have to walk on eggshells because you don't know what's going to cause them to overreact, here's a little bit of insight. They may be struggling with something like ADD. And if they are, and then they had PTSD on top of it, something happened in their life when they were younger that they didn't process through it. Let's see how it all kind of comes in a package. Then they're going to have all of these suppressed emotions. The thing about people who tend to, who behave in a more narcissistic way is they've got memory about certain things, but no memory about other things. So they literally don't, because many times their brain is just working on how to interact, how to engage. There are people who process by verbalizing. So when they're saying all those horrible things, they're actually processing. Whereas you may think the horrible things and keep them in your head, process them in your head, they don't have that ability. They have to process it by coming out of themselves. And so it can completely turn into this thing, this thing of a good person and then this emotionally violent person, and a good person and emotionally violent person, because they're constantly trying to manage how they think and how they feel in the best way they know how. And so you, being safe, end up getting the brunt of it and the blame and the shame, because just think about it. There's so much going on around all of that mental health. So here's this person who's successful in one area, but can't keep their emotions in check. They can't keep their thoughts in check. They're bombarded by negative thinking. They're bombarded by anger and anxiety, because their brain isn't getting what it needs. So things like coffee and chocolate and sugar and Adderall and other stimulants, they help people who struggle with it think more clearly. Have you ever noticed that when someone gets tired, or especially your narcissist, when they get tired or they get hungry, or they're under stress in another area of their life, that's when they're most likely to act out? Look it up. Start looking up things like ADD and ADHD and bipolar, and see where your narcissist fits in. And what it will do is it will start to give you ways on how to manage them better, ways on how to navigate that relationship and situation. That's what it gives you. And then my job is to help you take care of yourself, so that you aren't reacting, so you don't behave in a narcissistic way, so that you don't end up destroying yourself because you're so conflicted by your own stuff. You just don't have it to the same degree or level as a narcissist may. However, what happens is you end up getting sick because of it. It's like you catch the sickness of the narcissist. It does get entrained, it does pass forward and on, and you do pick it up. And that's why you end up feeling traumatized and sick and overwhelmed, because you haven't been dealing with this all your life. Maybe you did with your family, but it wasn't inside you. It was in your environment. And then you dealt with your trauma. So are narcissists inherently bad people? Clinical narcissists have a lot of problems going on. Most people are on a spectrum of narcissism, and from the very good people to the very bad people. And when we start to look deeper, dive deeper into what might be behind it, then we can heal or deal with or cope with these very difficult relationships. But you get to choose. Here's the deal. People who have high narcissistic tendencies have a lot going on. They're hardwired into bad habits and bad patterns. They are completely convinced that that the only way for them to survive is to fight back. They have very little ability to acknowledge the fact that that it's them who are struggling because of the insecurity and the fragility and the anger and the hurt and they're very confused. They're very stuck in a place, and they may be extremely intelligent about other things, but what they haven't figured out is themselves. And you might not be a good enough reason for that. They may need other reasons besides you, which are good enough. And so you have to decide first and foremost whether this is something that you want to move forward with, or whether this is something that you want to walk away from. You get to decide. And if you decide you want to stick because there's enough benefits versus drawbacks, or there's a need, or this is just where you're at right now, what you do is you start to learn how to deal with it so you can get some breathing room and start to heal yourself. And when you get to a place of health and wellness, you are now able to deal with people who have baggage in their past. But until you get into a good place, you have to allow a narcissist to handle their own stuff, and bit by bit, you'll get a better handle on you and you'll get a better handle on them. And if you want, together, you should be able to move forward. But the most important thing is for you to get into a healthy place first and start to understand the situation you're really in. So if someone is completely disconnected for most of the time, look up Asperger's, look up autism, see what that's all about. If somebody is great, but emotionally volatile and unpredictable, look at ADD, look at ADHD, look at bipolar, investigate some of those things, get some books on Amazon, and see if your narcissist fits that more often, fits the cues and the things that you see. Because the hardest part about all of this is that narcissists are blaming you and you're blaming you. So and your voices in your head from your past are blaming you. So you have to get to a healthy place first. You have to stop blaming you and realize that you're doing the best that you know how. They're doing the best that they know how. And how do we move forward in a healthy way? So if you feel stuck, reach out. I've got this great group. We're going to be doing $100 a month, but what it includes is one-on-one coaching and weekly calls and a private Facebook group and a community of wonderful women as part of a mastermind. We've got a wonderful group that I work with, and it's pretty affordable. It's an entry point if you are feeling stuck and feeling like you need more than you have. So reach out, because we'll get the process started, and we can get you to a healthier place, because it really is possible. It really, really is possible. You don't have to stay where you're at. You don't have to suffer. It's not a magic pill, but what it is it's you becoming a person who knows how to create a life for themselves that works, that you like, that you love, that makes you happy, whether you're with the narcissist or not. You become the person that you were supposed to be, which is someone who is flowering into her greatness. So I hope you have a great rest of the day. This seemed to work today, which is wonderful. We'll see, if we'll keep working on the Wi-Fi part. I used a hack this morning, and I'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye.